Sorry. Sorry I was late.
Don't worry about it.
How
I
you doing?
can see you though.
What, sweetie?
I can't see you.
Oh, that's bad. That wouldn't work.
There you are in all your glory. You look stunning as always, Tova. So good to have you. Let me introduce you. We have here today for Women's History Month a very special guest. Her name is Tovah Feldshuh. She barely needs an introduction. She is a six-time Tony Emmy nominee. She has three doctorates of humane letters, four drama desks, four out of critics circles awards, three drama logs, among other awards. Tova is an actress, a playwright, a concert artist, and an author. And a kick-ass mother and grandmother, but you didn't hear it from me. So Tova is joining us today because I asked her as part of our ongoing series for Women's History Month, who am I? And rather than just give us an essay, Tova was kind enough to join us to discuss who she is in all her glory, all her facets. And I've had the pleasure of knowing Tova and her family and her parents, siblings, for now about 30 years. So this is going to be an interesting interview because um, I hope to be able to share with you all the glory that is Tova. So Tova, we're going to start off with something that's very interesting. You've decided to write a book about your mother called Lilyville, which is now on advance, but we hope, please God, will be with Amazon soon in time for Mother's Day. Tell me, Tova, why mother and not father?
Interesting. Well, first of all, it is on pre-sale at Amazon, Target, and your indie bookstores. And if you go to tovafeldshuh.com/Lilyville, you can order the book immediately. And those who do pre-order, if you send me your receipt, there's a way to contact me through my website, and you send me your address, I will send you an autographed book plate personally for you, like to Lenore or to Surrey, with all my love, Tova. I'll probably say Tovah Felch if you think it's worth something. Anyway, that's my perk for those who have faith in me before the book even comes out. My mother lived till over 103. And in terms of who we are, we're a conglomerate of our forebears, of our visions, of our unique past. We have a great privilege as Jews to have the fear of extinction. And what the fear of extinction does to the human body and the human soul is it thrusts it forward toward accomplishment, contribution. There is no accident that there are more Nobel Prizes in Israel and more copyrights in Israel and inventions than in any other country in the world. I believe part of the reason is not just Jewish seichel, is that the idea that existence is a privilege. It's not a given, not a given. And that death can be here or it can be way over there. We have the advantage of, in our history, in our very um, vivid and difficult history, of knowing what it means for our lives to be threatened. God knows Purim just passed, and that was a prime example of the possibility of the eradication of the Jewish people. So, why Lilyville? She lived so long that I was able to solve all my problems with her. She had the grace of living till over 103. So there were no mother daughter conflicts left. There was a huge arc in our relationship. I very much was my father's girl, and Suri knew my father and worked for my father, who was a litigator. And I really based my lifestyle on my father's view of the universe. He lost his father at 16, and he fought in World War II. So he knew death twice in his life, when he was 16 and again when he was 32 in the war. And he came home from that war. I wasn't born yet. I was his only post war baby, born in the 50s. He didn't live life, he lived life. And that's how I based my life. And who tried to stop me to be more thoughtful, more careful, more cautious? My mother. And we had tremendous conflicts. Some of them were loving, some of them weren't. She came from a tradition where You didn't tell a child you loved them because it shouldn't give them a swelled head. Can you imagine? So when I was 18, I said, "Do you love me?" And it was right out of Fiddler. "Do I love you? Who takes you to the lessons? Who does this? Who stays in the station wagon? Who reads House Beautiful while you're at two piano? Who carts you all over the place?" So she expressed her love in mitzvahs, but I needed love from verbal communication. And that was a very sparse area between my mother and me, and a very fertile area with my father, Sidney.
So
So
rather than speak about, write about, let's say, them as a couple, as parents, why specifically hone on Lily, who was a challenge for you, rather than your father, who seems to have inspired you?
interesting. I I think because Lily and I both were mothers, and that was my first approximation with my mother was when I chose to marry a Harvard lawyer, as she had married a Harvard lawyer. So she built a throne to Andrew Harris Levy, and we're now, whew, that means call your grandson, but I'll do that after our interview. She built a throne to Andrew Harris Levy, par excellence. And on the day of my wedding, said, "You can do anything you want. Now you're marrying a Harvard lawyer." I didn't remind her I just won 5 awards on Broadway and was on the marquee of the O'Neill Theater in Yentl. But never mind, never mind. I thought she was going to say, "You can do anything you want, television, film." So when I married Andy, that gave her a sense of safety, and we became closer because we had similar point of views. When I gave birth to our children, I became a mother and realized all she did as a mother to preserve and protect her young. And Lily, in that way, was a great mother. She was incredibly dependable. She was always there, and she preserved and protected her young. She was too cautious for my taste, but God bless her. Not everybody gets to live to 103 in 3 months, and maybe that's the way she did it.
So let
Other
me ask you something, Tova, based on that. You said that she was dependable and always there. You have had an amazing trajectory of a career. And I remember bringing your infant daughter into your dressing room so you could nurse her in between scenes. What do you think I mean, and you tried your hardest, but clearly because you were working on Broadway many times, you were not there at nights. You were not there on Saturdays and Sundays. What do you think, how do you think that impacted your children, and how has that come to pass as they've grown up and had their own children again?
It really actually led to a few good things, which I'm amazed. Well, first of all, one of my children didn't learn to read while I was so busy starring on Broadway. So when that happened, I stopped doing Broadway for 13 years. And when he went on to Harvard and Amanda went away for Swiss semester, I did Golda's Balcony. So I did no unlimited runs after I was not, in my family, if you can't bring up your children, you're a flea. But what I did do is I followed my bliss, as the professor Joseph Campbell would say. So I taught the children, A, that they have to earn a living, have to earn a living, and that a woman particularly must have her own money. I've always believed that, and my husband has respected that. And B, that if you can get a job that you love, then it's not a job, it's a life work. And that's what I was able to do. I was able to funnel all my anger, my upsets, my ecstasies through the funnel of different people, whether it was Golda Meir or Yentl or Helena Slomova in Holocaust or Judy Stein and Kissing Jessica Stein or Bubby Kantrowitz and Walk on the Moon or Three Kings of Henry VIII, Catherine Hepburn, Maria Morelli, or the Christian rescuer Irene Gut in Irene's Vow. I was able to funnel any exigencies of my personality that may not have had a nice place in just normal social intercourse into the funnels of these characters. And every night at 6:30, I'd get to the theater, and by 8 o'clock I was somebody else, and by 11 o'clock I was back to myself. But I always had a vacation. It was a eight time a week vacation. Also, in terms of inspiration, Sidney was a playwright in the sense that he was a litigator. He was a trial lawyer, so he wrote his own scripts and he concocted his own arguments and he could think on his feet. And these are the qualities that an actor deeply, deeply needs to have a long term successful career. So I
I,
taught children to work, I taught the children to earn money, and I taught them they were entitled to be happy. And I don't mean happy like a couch potato. I mean to spend their efforts in a worthy cause, in their tikkun.
And what is your favorite tikkun olam? I know that it's a very important concept to you. And what do you think needs fixing most? Either the top one or the top two or three.
Well, at this point, the thing that needs fixing most was the government and the mental illness of our last president. And I know there may be many of you who believe in his policies, but I want you to look at the man. I want you to look at the character of the man and the psychic break between what is truth and what he perceived as truth. And this has not stopped. So he has unleashed a wave of white supremacy in this country that is screaming. It's just screaming. I haven't heard diatribes like this since I'm a little kid and Eisenhower desegregated the schools. So that the country needs healing. The country needs healing. But before this, before 2016 to 2020, I was very involved in trying to get Middle East peace, kicking through and getting Israel in a state, however I could, whether it's raising money for our hospitals or raising money for the disabled or raising money for the wounded warrior, to, you know, Israel, like any country, they just want to go to the beach. You know what I mean? They want to go to the beach and relax and read a book. If you think they want to get up in the morning and put on a uniform and carry an AK-47, you're out of your mind. It's not. It's not. It's not what they'd rather do. So I have worked for that, and I've been very lucky. I changed my name from Terry Sue to Tova, so a lot was called upon me to do stuff, to do things, and all I did was respond. It's not like I founded an organization. I didn't. I just said yes instead of no when people needed help.
Did you regret changing looking back now, do you regret changing your name from Terry Sue to Tova, which then kind of cornered you into many Jewish parts?
Part of me said, what would life have been like had I been Terry Fairchild? I was Terry Fairchild in the summer of 1968 because I was in love with Michael Fairchild. And it was his family came over to America from England in 1621. My family came over from Russia and from England, also from England in 1902, in steerage through Ellis Island. And incidentally, Andy's family came over in the 1880s before there was Ellis Island through Castle Garden. So he always says I married upstream because his grandparents were American. Mine, of course, were all European, Austrian, German, English, and Russian. Um, uh, what was? Let me see. Repeat your question now that I've gone
The,
off.
the question is, are you sorry that you changed your name from Terry
Right.
Sue to Tova
So
and got cornered a bit?
yeah, so I was in love with Michael Fairchild, and we were head to head one day at Matunic in Theater by the Sea, and he said, "What else were you called besides Terry Sue? Terry Sue is such an odd name for you. You're from the North, and you're Jewish." And I said, "Well, I was called Tova in Sunday school. I was even cagey about saying Tova in Hebrew school because I didn't go. I went to Hebrew school. I went to Hebrew school 2 to 4, 2 to 4, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 to 1 on Sundays. I was in the conservative and still am the conservative movement." And when he heard the name Tova, which was after my great aunt Tilly, who died early of TB, Sarah, my middle name, Sue, was after my great grandmother, Sarah Abrahams in London, who lived a very long life. Okay, when he heard the name Tova, he made a meal out of the vowels. He just made a meal. He went, Tova. Now that's a name. And so I took on the name Tova for love. It wasn't political, it wasn't religious. And like any 18-year-old, I had no idea of the consequences. And what happens is it changed the entire landscape of my life. Not at Sarah Lawrence, but the minute I got to Minnesota on the Guthrie at the Guthrie, I was a McKnight Fellow and had a scholarship. Let me just see if I can make this quieter. I was a McKnight Fellow at the Tyrone Guthrie Theater, and Tova is a Scandinavian name. Tova is a Danish name, so that I was Tovah Feldshuh. I was a local girl from Copenhagen whose parents came to Minnesota. So that was pretty wild. So they thought I was local. Then I got to New York, and the state of Israel fell on my head. Because Shakespeare says, "What's in a name? A rose by any other name would smell as sweet." Not actually true. There's a lot in a name because people don't have time to be you. Only you have time to be you. People's lives are about themselves. We're stuck in our own bodies. It's about ourselves. Am I going to eat the mango next to me while I'm speaking to Lenore? No, I'm not. Am I going to go get the glass of water I'm kind of thinking of? No, I'm not. I'm going to speak to Lenore now, but I have a finite barrier of where I begin and end, at least physically, maybe not mentally. So a Tovah Feldshuh immediately took on the perceived value of Orthodox, foreign, Israeli. I was neither Orthodox, I was neither Israeli, nor am I foreign. I was born on the east side of Manhattan and grew up in New York, Scarsdale, went to Sarah Lawrence and Columbia. I'm completely local. Uh, it,
Tova, of all the characters that you named above, all the women, the strong women characters that you named above, I have two questions. One is, who was your favorite to play? And number two, in preparing your research about these women, is there anything that you learned about them that you absorbed into you, Tova, the live person, from the character? Sometimes, and you imbue yourself into the character. Are there any of those characters, those strong women, that you found something distinct and unique about that you said, you know what, I really like that about the person. I'm going to adopt that for Tova.
Sure, in the sense that even when you read a book, I just finished Sanjay Gupta's book, The Sharp Mind. I highly recommend it. And it talks about the ability of exercise to lubricate the brain. So I say to all you, anybody listening to me, cut a sweat every day. This is from Sydney. If you cut a sweat every day and you pee and you poop, where can disease land? Sydney Feldshuh. So I I loved, you know, the I didn't have a favorite role. The roles are like different children. They're different children. You love them all. I love doing Juliet in an historic production in the West Coast that did very very well in Romeo and Juliet. I love playing Little Yentl, and when you do play a character, you look for confluence. You look for where you and Yentl are alike, where you and Golda are alike. Golda was like being on Mars. She was 168 pounds and a size 16. I'm a size 6. I'm 113 pounds. So I had to really understand her. And for instance, one of her virtues is she doesn't have my ego. She really regarded, oh look, this was a gift from Temple Emmanuel. There's Golda. She really regarded the state of Israel as her primogenitor. She had three children. She had her son and her daughter, but she had the state of Israel first. And that was her baby. She absolutely, in order for her to breathe, she had to create a postage stamp on which the Jewish people could live. And that idea got born in Denver when she ran away from her home. She was valedictorian of her class at the 4th Street School in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And her parents wanted her to work in their little candy store instead of going to high school. And she took a train in the middle of the night to live with her politically active older sister, Shana, and her husband. And in that tubercular kitchen, Shana lived in Denver because she had TB. All these victims of tuberculosis, all these Jewish intellectuals would come and talk into the night about the state of the international Jewish community. So, like my mother had Frank Sinatra, Golda Meir had Ben Gurion. She fell in love with the idea of Zionism right there in the wide open spaces of Denver, and she followed through. So, what do we get when we play people of virtue? We watch how they follow through. We watch how they only need one yes, what I call only need one yes. There are going to be obstacles in life. When I applied for my first job as an actor, I sent out 100 pictures and resumes. I got 10 responses. I got one job offer out of 100, one. But I only needed one. And I said yes. And I went to Matuna and changed my name from Terry Fairchild to Tovah Feldshuh, or from Terry Sue Feldshuh to Tovah Feldshuh. Um, so I learned from Golda. I learned from little Yentl, who had to sacrifice, it was well before gender equality, sacrifice her feminine identity in order to study Torah, Talmud, and Kabbalah, to be honest with you. That's what I love about Chabad, is the relationship to Kabbalah. I think that's very, very engaging.
Tova, um, you visited the five towns a few weeks ago with me. And tell us about the part that you came to research, and tell us about what you thought you were going to find. Tell us about what you did find, and tell me about what you surprised you most.
Well, first of all, it was an incredibly cozy experience, close knit experience. And it was interesting. Of course, I'm a proponent. I just played RBG. I played Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, so I'm a big proponent of gender equality. But what I noticed in the group of women, extraordinary women I met with their homes teeming with children, how you do your work and have the children, 7 children, my hat goes off to you. What I found no sense in any woman I met there of deprivation, that they're oppressed, that they are second rate citizens, that they have all these glass ceilings they can't break through. I got this feeling they have this hugely full life and they do their thing and they see their husband do their thing, whether it's studying or having a different profession, and they meet for meals and they, of course, meet in their marriage bed. But there wasn't a sense, I guess it was there wasn't a sense of, when I went to Andy's Harvard reunion, of those Radcliffe girls standing up and screaming about why they weren't allowed into Lowell Library to hear Dylan Thomas speak, and how there were segregated rules for where women were not allowed. So the environment I was in at the Five Towns courted none of that. Of course, I didn't go to a shul, and I have been to very Orthodox shuls where women are not only upstairs, but they're upstairs behind a like a concrete wall with a little slit in it. So that's not for me, baby. Um, I
Yet
got
you attend an Orthodox shul in the Hamptons.
Yes, yeah, their mechitza is about as high as my knee, and Mark Schneier is the mover and shaker. I go there because the sermons are great, and he gets these unbelievable guest speakers from the mayor of East Jerusalem to prime ministers of Israel. I've never seen anything like it, so I find it exciting, and I go because for me it works. Just like I understand for people who are Balchuvim or whatever, the way the Chabad works is very appealing. Also, I have my cousin David Gottlieb. He's my first cousin. He's a Feldshuh. Dale Gottlieb was a Sylvia Feldshuh's child, and he runs Or Sameach, or helps run Or Sameach as a professor over there in Israel for the Balchuvim. Back to the virtues of the roles I've played. I was lucky because the perceived value of a Tovah Feldshuh is that she can play King Lear. That I can carry a heavy weight. So instead of getting King Lear, which I may play, talking about gender equality, I get Golda Meir and Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Miriam. This is the mother of Oscar Isaac in a miniseries for HBO called Scenes from a Marriage. And he comes from a traditional Jewish Orthodox home, and he marries a shiksa, and unfortunately, the entire marriage doesn't work, and they break up, and then he marries the appropriate Jewish girl, and in this miniseries, sneaks around on her. So it's very, very complicated, and I have surprising interchanges with him about his marriages, about his obligation to his daughter, to, to his daughter from the first marriage, and I am his wake up call about what it means to be a mensch and not a slob. It means to be a mensch, to be strong. And
And
it's
you
funny.
said that you found insight here in the Five Towns. How so?
Well, the women I met were very strong. They were principals of schools. They were teachers. They were managing their homes. They were double tasking. Minzy was both pregnant and with a child on her lap, and answering fairly in-depth questions about how how this modern Orthodox woman might have run her life. Also, it was it's the Five Towns where I visited. These, of course, were your friends. Was like an open door policy. Maybe your front doors are locked, but the place is teeming with visits. Everybody's visiting each other. So the community isn't this. The community is very expansive, and people come to each other's aid as if we're in a very upper middle class. We are in a very upper middle class shtetl. There it is. I mean, and I think that the Orthodox community of the Five Towns, or whatever that community is, the Jewish, feel understands the gratitude we owe to America, that we don't have the Cossacks at our doors. We are not in Europe anymore. We are not in Russia. We
Thank
are
God.
not in restricted places nearly as much as one was in earlier times.
So Tova, it sounds like what you said is true. We're trying to hold down our gratitude and support our gratitude during this very difficult time in our community. Is there a lesson that you personally learned from being in quarantine during this pandemic?
Well, I think we have to go inside. And those of you who are deists and have Hashem on your shoulder, God bless you, because your relationship with Him can be very useful when you're isolated. Those of us who are not deists but believe deeply in Judaism and the mitzvah, um, I also went inside. I wrote my memoir about my mother, and I know Hashet. You know, a mother daughter relationship is the most primal connection of all. We're lucky. The babies come out of our bodies. You know, you go to a hospital and you go to pee, and a head comes out of your body, and you believe in God. Even I believed in God when that happened. I thought, oh my heavens to Betsy, there are forces outside of me that exist, and I do believe that, but more like our Native American, like God spark. Like I go to the sea every day when I'm in the Hamptons at our other house and speak to my mother in the sea because my mother was the sea to me. From all life began from the sea. Can you imagine that first fish that had enough strength in its fins to get on land and become an amphibian? And would lead to the animal world and would lead to our world. That is my belief. I'm sorry for the people who are creationists. I love you too. I love you too. And I hope you like me. The biggest thing I've learned in my growth period is that I've always said a branch, in order to bear fruit, must learn to bend. Is the ability to embrace people who are not like us, to try to understand them. And you really need to get with the program because America has awakened to that. And the whole Black is Beautiful movement, the whole people of color have a place in the American mosaic, is rocketing now. So we better get with that movement as we embrace our own traditions, let it strengthen us so we can go out into the world and welcome people without fear. That's
Tova, what is what you are in Hollywood, you are in the whole entertainment field. How was it that all these decades, the producers and the writers and and all the people of influence in Hollywood and in entertainment got away with what we now call before the Me Too movement?
Eros and power are very, very close bedfellows. Otherwise, who would kiss Rudy Giuliani? That's usually my sense of humor. Um, it's been going on for years. I think it went on with Ahasuerus and Vashti. I think he asked too much of her, and she said, "Forget it." And then she got herself in hot water. I wouldn't want to go dance naked in front of my husband and his friends. I don't think that's a fair question. So I think it's been going on since the alpha male has existed, and he was the hunter, and we were he was the hunter gatherer, and we were in the tents, and the perception that we are we are the vessels to receive punishment, receive joy, receive ecstasy. They got away with it because mothers, they didn't have Lily. I never was on the casting couch, and I'm not flawless by any means, but never. And that came from the what my mother gave me. And my father said, if you're excellent, the rest will follow. I don't think that's true. I think you have to be excellent. You have to be good at interrelationships. You have to have friends, but you don't have to use your body to prostitute yourself to get a job. And what happened to one of my agent, Ronnie Meyer, who then became the head of Universal, he was duped by a very professional extortionist. She slept with him. She slept with another head of a studio, and she extorted money out of all of them. And he still lost his position. But that's how she became a millionaires. So she used her genitals to seduce men, and then she would take them.
Tova, if you could ask God one question, what would it be?
I would ask him to manifest for me. I'd say, "Where are you? Manifest for me. Are you in synchronicity? Are you in the sunny shape that was at the bottom of Julie Ratner's swimming pool when there was no sun, in the shape of a human being on the fifth anniversary of my mother's death? Was that you? Was that my mother coming back to a perceivable, a perception of mine to be with me, to tell me everything's all right? That's what I would say. I would say, where are you? Where are you? And come to me. I would ask him to come to me.
So interesting because just in this coming week's Torah portion, we have Moshe asking God, reveal yourself to me.
Oh, that's wild. That's totally wild. Well, there you go. You see, there you go.
Hareni na et kvodecha. God, show me your essence. That's what's in this week's Torah portion of Kitisa. So, Tova, what do you pray for most?
I pray that my children will outlive me. I pray for our health. Our health is our wealth. I pray for the sanctity of the government of the United States. And we have a good man. We have a mensch. We have a ganze mensch in the White House now. We have a man who loves truth. You know, things are not rosy. It's not his job to make everything perfect, but it's his job to include us in the project called America and try to get America back on its moral feet. On its moral feet. So I also pray for peace, not just worldly peace, but peace inside of me. I have this app on my phone called Headspace. I highly recommend it. The big $70 it'll cost you for a year. They have all different meditations where they train the mind about thoughts. And you know, always remember thoughts, believe it or not, thoughts are just thoughts. They're just thoughts. You can let go of them and you can go to zero mind. And in zero mind, where you have space, probably Hashem could come, has a place to come visit. So that's what I pray for, and that's what I try to practice every day: being centered, doing a good deed, um, writing somebody who has had a loss. In this case, one of my blood sisters from Quaker Ridge School lost her mother, Margie Westreich, or writing Ronnie Meyer. I am very sad for him. He was very good to me. He was a very good man. And none of these guys, including Harvey Weinstein, which is appalling, it's appalling what they did. They never came on to me, and I worked for all of them. Harvey Weinstein used to say, being with you is like being with the Beatles. I said, what does this mean? I didn't walk on the moon for him. So I was never bait. And somehow, I'm not saying these men were not wrong. They were terribly wrong. They used their might and their strength to oppress and to pull stuff out of other people that women didn't want to give. But somewhere in me, somehow was transmitted that don't you dare go there. Don't you dare, or there will be hell to pay. And not from my father or my mother, from right here. And somehow that message. I also left Hollywood. I was there for 5 years and I gave birth to Brandon. And I said, I can't bring up a child here. I can't do it. I can't live in this moral tenor. I don't stand a chance with my babies. And education, of course, to the Jewish mind is paramount. So we came back east, and there were four grandparents who loved us, and they got a brilliant education, and one ended up at Harvard and the other at MIT, and I did a good job. I did a good job, but I left Hollywood to do it and left that kind of ubiquitous fame and fortune. But if you sell your soul for money, that's what you're going to be left with: money, not necessarily happiness, decency, kindness. So make sure you give yourself to causes you really believe in, causes that last. And
And I was going to ask you about your career mother balance, but I think in everything that you have said thus far, you clearly show how you've balanced your illustrious career with your magnificent children. So, Tova, what is left on your bucket list?
well, my book Lilyville comes out in 6 weeks, April 13th for Mother's Day, and of course 13th for us is a very lucky number. And I just want to say that Lilyville, mother daughter, and other roles I've played is the story of a relationship of the most primal connection of all, of a mother and a daughter. And the story here will be told like any tale, like your tales. It'll be a map across time with destinations, rest stops, wrong turns, and at last coming home, which is what happened with my mother and me. It's an ancient journey that we all know, but it's one worth telling. And I tell it in this book through the voice of my mother, Lily, and me, in order to stimulate in you the look that you have at your relationship with your parents, mother or father. My mother and I started out like this, and by the end of her life, the last 20 years of her life, we were inseparable. We were really one soul. So I'm very lucky to have had that extraordinary experience. And then with my father, it was always a love affair. Always loved that guy. Always loved that guy. I used to come home and I would pull in my car. They gave me a little Toyota when I was at Sarah Lawrence. I'd pull into their driveway in Scarsdale, and my father would say, "She's home, Lily. She's home." And my mother would say, "What's she wearing? Is she dressed properly?" That was so. That's on my bucket list, is to uh, promote the book because it's worth it, because it tells a tale that's deep, and tells the tale of the longest, most successful role I've ever played in my life, which is Lillian Kaplan Feldshuh's daughter, and it was a role I never auditioned for. But during the latter half of her life, I realized I was lucky to get. So if I can do it, you can do it. If any of you have any picadillos with your parents, it's they all can be solved. Honest to God, they all can be solved.
So now, Tova, I hope that in this last half hour that we've been discussing you and your life, we go back to full circle, which is when I sent you a text and I said, Tova, can you write an essay that says, "Who am I?" And you're like, no, I'd rather just have an interview. So, Tova, who are you?
I'm a person who's still defined by my mitzvahs. I'm a person who has had to learn to meditate and sit still. I'd rather always be in motion. I'm a person who has learned to be a superb listener in life. I've always been a good listener on the stage. My stage behavior was about 2 years ahead, socially, 2 years ahead of my social behavior. And my stage behavior would teach me the manners that I needed on off the stage. Um, I'm also a person who changed her name, and it changed her life. And in order for me to have a decent and successful life, of course, I've enjoyed that change. What else am I going to do? It happened 50 years ago. So I'm very grateful for um, for what the Tova in me and the Tova that the world sees has brought me. I mean, some roles I had to fight for, like love letters or the roles of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, but I still got them. If they judged on excellence, I still took that role off the conveyor belt. And other roles, the great, I mean, like Yentl and Golda and RBG, they were just handed to me. Or Naomi Bunch in Where's the, in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Please see season 1, episode 8, the Christmas special, my 5-page full solo. Where's the bathroom? You can find it on YouTube. Um, I, I, that's it. Also, I'm very proud to have maintained my marriage. My marriage is 44 years old. My husband and I have known each other 45 years. And this stage of my marriage is very, very sweet. I did marry for love. I married the right guy. And as Margaret Mead says, you marry one man several different ways, or you marry several men the same, the same way. So I married one man, and the marriage had to change. And I had a great partner. I had a partner who was a willing dance partner, where we could change the steps of our dance. And it has worked out. And he has never um, prevented me from working. He's made his request, but he's never prevented me from living my full life. And it was also part of our early contract. I said, "You don't want to marry me because I will never leave my work." And I meant it. And it's not that I love my work, it's that I needed the escape from the relationship on a daily basis, just to breathe, to have something of my very own, to have a room of my very own. I love everybody. You don't have to share every single thing with your husband, ladies. You share some things. He doesn't have to share everything with you. As long as the big pillars are in place, no betrayal, no drugs, no drunkenness, except on Passover, Purim, if you really want to get wild. Um, the religion really takes care of it, doesn't it? You can cross dress on Purim, you can gamble on Hanukkah, You must, try to make love on Shabbos. Feel like a king on Passover. You have one fast day. Actually, I know you have more like the fast of Esther and the religious people, but it's very useful, very useful. So it's and a confessional, the 24-hour confessional of the days of all. Very practical religion. That's what I love about Judaism. It's so practical. So if you're not going to be a Jew by your belief in God, you'll be a Jew by what you eat. You like latkes. If you're not going to be a Jew that way, you'll be a Jew by the way you socialize. As I said to my friend whose child married out, I said, it's all fine except the bride won't know the secret language. There's a whole language. When I stepped into the five towns, I didn't know anybody but Surrey. But there's a whole language that Jewish people share, Landsman, uh, uh, for the Ashkenazi or the Sephardim. I spent most of my childhood with the Iranian Jews, and as they hit each other with scallions on Dayenu, I said, okay, we'll hit each other with scallions. I'm cool. So
But it's
that's
so
what
lovely how you're open to all the beauty of the different sects and of Judaism. You want to learn more. You are learning more, and in return, God has given you such a beautiful and gracious career, and you've been an ambassador of God. No matter who you meet, no matter what you've done, you've brought the grace of Judaism to the fore. People know you've taken one of the reasons why we were redeemed from Egypt, Tova, is because the women never changed their names. And you embraced Tova and you ran with it. And you said, like all the messengers that Chabad has around the world, you have gone around the world with your name Tova and have been an ambassador of God to let people know about morality, ethics, humor, careers, and excellence in what you do. And you've gone and you've been, and you're no lesser and probably even greater for being that messenger of God throughout your life and whomever you've met and whatever you've done. And I'm so grateful and so honored to have been your friend now for over 30 years. And I'm so glad that I've had this opportunity to share your magnificence and everything that you are with my friends, my community, and with 750,000 Jews in 170 countries around the world.
fantastic. Let me say, my darling Lenore, one of the other things about who I am is I happen to love being Jewish. You know why I love being Jewish? I'll tell you why, because my father loved being Jewish. My father loved it. He loved it. Every Friday night we're together, and every Saturday he coached our team. So that's what I've done, and God will have to forgive us. But he loved who he was, and who he was was a Jew, and he was good with that. Also, Judaism has given even the less religious of us a framework within how to function. I mean, it's not a mistake that we brought the Ten Commandments to the planet. And actually, Joseph Campbell talks about the source of anti-Semitism. When Moses came down with the Ten Commandments and said, "Hey guys, don't covet your neighbor's wife and don't murder people, and there is just one God. There aren't all these idol things." The people of the world said, "Go screw yourself. I want to go to the beach. I want to take all my idols, and I want to have 12 wives, and I want to be promiscuous, and I want to have no limits. I want to have no limits." So that's his feeling, Joe Campbell. I'm not saying I go along with it, but it was very interesting. For me, Judaism has been a framework, and it has taught me to stand up straight and sometimes alone. I was the only conservative Jew at Quakerite school. Everybody was busy with assimilating as ultra reform. God bless them. God bless them all. God bless them all. They were all married as Jews and buried as Jews, but I was the only conservative Jew and the only bat mitzvah, and I was a pianist. So I had to stand alone from the time I remember. And so when I went to Hollywood, I probably was spared that casting couch because I wasn't weak. I had good parents, good training, and Judaism as a cloak, like a tallis, around me. And that's it. I wish whoever's out there who happens to be a woman, keep empowering yourselves. The women I met out in the five towns were what extraordinary, and the wigs were gorgeous, darling. The wigs were gorgeous. You, Tovah.
I love you, Tovah. Thank you for being with me.